In 1919, 6 years after the release of the Model T, there were already more than 7 million cars and trucks traveling the mostly unpaved roads of the United States. On April 19 of that year, Elias Fife and Ralph Van Allen founded Standard Motor Products. The company first operated by buying finished parts in bulk and repacking them in glass jars for distribution. The company's first products were primarily ignition parts, such as ignition switch keys, or as Standard's first catalog stated, standard parts for standard cars. Elias Fife had a sales-minded approach for Standard and envisioned a team that was, quote, superior in numbers and superior in its ability to compete. The approach paid off, as evidenced by this letter to Elias Fife from A.H. Borden of Borden Akelin Auto Supply.
We have handled your products for quite some time, and we have been very much surprised with the results of our sales on this line. Our sales have increased steadily and are still showing an increase. The merchandise itself is very satisfactory. We consider it one of the few high-grade lines of electrical goods manufactured.
In 1921, as the country's first drive-in restaurant opened in Texas, the company moved from its first location on East 19th Street in Manhattan to Long Island City, Queens. Automotive technology continued to expand in the early 1920s with the inventions of the convertible, traffic signal, and the first American car with four-wheel hydraulic brakes. In 1926, SMP continued to expand too by introducing wire and cable to its product line. By the end of the 1920s, a decade that brought the television, penicillin, and a woman's right to vote, Standard Motor Products established a company policy called personal service, which stated quality in manufacturing, integrity in selling, fairness in all dealings with customers, and a sales force second to none. In 1930, Standard adopted the slogan, "Everything electrical for the automobile." Around this time, the company started manufacturing ignition products, such as point sets, condensers, distributor caps, and rotors. In 1936, 1 year after the total vehicle population topped 24 million and the first flashing turn signal was introduced, the company relocated again, this time to its present address at 3718 Northern Boulevard. As the company expanded, a cast of early employees played a critical role in the company's success, including Irving Beck, a manufacturer of battery cable who leased space for his manufacturing operation in Standard's building. In 1934, Standard made its first acquisition when it purchased Beck's wire and cable manufacturing business. Other key people included Beck's brother-in-law, Emil Kameny, who developed many products including the Blue Streak voltage regulator and created training clinics in the late 1940s. Dorothy Luce, who marketed Standard's products overseas, and Lou Woda, the first plant superintendent, who was fond of saying, "Quality first, whatever it costs." During the early years of the aftermarket, Standard was instrumental in helping earn the industry a reputation of quality and reliability, whether it was with early efforts from its sales force, Elias Fife's personally directing the legal effort on behalf of the entire aftermarket for the Supreme Court's establishment of the right to repair doctrine, or the introduction of the premium quality line called Blue Streak, which was superior in quality to and more expensive than the OE part. As the country entered World War II, Standard provided service parts for U.S. Army motor transport and ordnance vehicles, as well as aircraft subassemblies. During the war years, Standard kept its sales force intact, a decision that proved beneficial when the war ended and the company's sales force was at full strength. In 1947, after gasoline rationing had ended and the automobile became a more important part of the American way of life, Standard's sales force totaled 45 people. More expansions included the acquisition of High Grade Products Company in 1947, expanding the product line to include carburetor repair parts and speedometer cables. In the summer of 1950, Standard held its first 25-year dinner event. Since then, the company has held its 25-year club every few years. Today, more than 1,000 employees belong to the prestigious club. During the 50s, the total vehicle population neared 60 million, and new technologies like cruise control and power steering entered the market. Even early on, Standard was committed to providing training for technicians to keep up with newer technologies, whether it was through service bulletins, clinics, or advertisements. One popular campaign was the Blue Streak Service Bulletin, which featured a character named Sherlock Mechanic, who conveyed complex technical material in a down-to-earth way. In 1959, Elias Fife retired from active management in the company. Two brothers-in-law, Bernard Fife and Nathaniel Sills, became the company's second-generation management team, leading a tremendous period of growth. During the 60s, the decade of the Beatles and Woodstock, the Vietnam War, and Neil Armstrong's walk on the moon, the domestic vehicle population surpassed 75 million, and automakers introduced new technologies, including the PCV system and electronic fuel injection system. SMP had milestones of its own. In 1960, Blue Streak introduced Lubra Points, an advanced assembled contact breaker point set featuring patented Lubrawick technology, and SMP became a publicly owned company. The stock was first traded over the counter, but as the company grew, the stock was listed on the New York Stock Exchange in 1977. During the 70s, when Microsoft and Apple were founded, the vehicle population pushed past 100 million. As the air conditioning business began to grow, Standard entered into the temperature control business with the acquisition of Four Seasons Comfort Controls in 1978 and Car Air Components, or Carco, in 1979. The company relocated its wire and cable operation in Edwardsville in 1978. That same year, it introduced its first technician clinics that were focused on a new automotive feature, electronics. The start of the 80s saw Standard become a member of the prestigious Fortune 500. A few years later, in 1986, Bernard Fife and Nathaniel Sills became co-chairman of the board of directors, and Larry Sills was named president, making him a third-generation CEO. 1989 brought the invention of the World Wide Web, and it was a busy year for Standard, too. The company opened its state-of-the-art distribution center in Disputanta, Virginia, and acquired Guaranteed Parts and Sorensen Industries, two ignition companies, each with nearly a century of experience. SMP also introduced its counterperson training program to support customers and raise brand awareness. But the biggest story was the company's response to Hurricane Hugo, which destroyed parts of SMP's Stanrick facility in Puerto Rico. Standard employee Dick Cannon organized a rescue initiative for the country that included a cargo plane with food and shelter. The plane, with Dick Cannon on board, was the first non-military plane to land after the storm. The 1990s saw the collapse of the Soviet Union and the introductions of both the first cloned mammal, Dolly the sheep, and the first mass-produced gas-electric hybrid vehicle, the Toyota Prius. With the vehicle population nearing 190 million, SMP experienced continued success, including the opening of the company's corporate training center in Irving, Texas. With this success, the company reached yet another major milestone in 1994 when it celebrated its 75th anniversary. Around that time, Larry's son, Eric Sills, joined the company to work in manufacturing. The fourth generation of leadership was now in place. In 1999, SMP opened its wire and cable manufacturing facility in Reynosa, Mexico. International expansion continued with the acquisition of an ignition company in Nottingham, UK called Intermotor. The deal included a 50-person ignition coil manufacturing operation in Białystok, Poland. Today, the operation has expanded to more than 700 employees and manufactures Blue Streak heavier-duty ignition coils, among other products. At the start of the early 2000s, a decade that gave birth to Facebook, YouTube, and the Kindle, SMP acquired Eklund from Dana Corporation. It was the largest acquisition in SMP history, consisting of 9 facility locations, including Independence, Kansas, and Mishawaka, Indiana, and more than 1,000 employees. But by the end of the decade, SMP's sustained success ended during the Great Recession. With bank lending dried up, the company faced its most dire financial situation to date. But thanks to sacrifices made by everyone throughout the company, SMP was able to emerge from the crisis stronger than ever. Shortly after, Larry Sills and SMP's board of directors rang the New York Stock Exchange closing bell to commemorate SMP's 90th anniversary. And a few years later, SMP was featured in The Atlantic for an article titled "Making It in America." The post-recession boom saw several moves for the future, including the development of a CNG fuel injector, an investment in Orange Electronics, a manufacturer of TPMS sensors based in Taichung, Taiwan, joint ventures with FGD, a manufacturer of compressors, and Guoying, a manufacturer of temp control products, and the acquisition of the wire set divisions of General Cable. Another move for the future was made in 2016 when Eric Sills was appointed as the next CEO in SMP history and the fourth generation of the Fife Sills family to be appointed to the office of Chief Executive. Today, in 2019, Standard Motor Products has grown leaps and bounds from the company that Elias Fife and Ralph Van Allen founded in 1919. The company now employs more than 5,000 people, generates over $1 billion in net sales, operates more than 25 facilities around the world, and is one of the leading manufacturers and distributors of replacement parts in the automotive aftermarket. Guiding the company's growth is a set of core values that have remained consistent from day one: premium quality products and premium brands, a commitment to basic manufacturing, world-class training and marketing support, a sales force that's second to none, and a time-tested ability to adapt to the automotive technologies of the day. As Standard Motor Products celebrates its 100th year in business, the company is proud to recognize all of the employees and customers who've helped make our first 100 years a century of excellence.